People say the darndest things. Telling people I'm autistic elicits a variety of comments and responses. Some of them are funny, some of them are really lovely, but some of them are downright rude. I've compiled a list of the top 10 comments that I've received personally when I tell people that I'm autistic. Most of them just stem from a lack of knowledge of what autism is, and some of them can be really hurtful, in particular number 8. To help me out today, I've invited my clone, Rini version 2.0, but we'll just call her Rani, shall we? Hi Rani. Hi Rini. Thanks for helping me out today. Absolutely, no problem at all. Shall we dive in and find out what the top 10 comments are? Yeah, let's do it. Hi, I'm Rini. I'm an autistic woman living the simple life on a rural property in Tasmania, and I have thoughts. If you're interested in DIY, cute animals, health and beauty, or lifestyle hacks, or just the experiences of an autistic person, then please subscribe and stick around. I would love to have you here. Coming out as an autistic person can be scary and very daunting. I know that when I was first diagnosed, I wondered how I would tell friends and family. I started with my close family, my close friends, and then I branched out from there to customers from my business and other people in my community. In fact, the local newspaper wrote an article about my autism diagnosis in the context of me being a business owner, so that really let the cat out of the bag. Along the way, I've received some really interesting responses to the news that I am autistic, so I've compiled a list of them here. My hope is that a newly diagnosed autistic person, maybe it's you or maybe someone you know, can be somewhat prepared for the comments and responses that may happen when you reveal the news to people. I'm also hoping that neurotypical people will find this list really useful and gain an insight into what effects their comments might have, and think about the way that they want to say something, or maybe change the way that they respond to the news that somebody is autistic. But first, a little bit of background about me. I was diagnosed with autism when I was 50 years old, which is quite late in life, but of course I've been autistic my entire life. Growing up in the 70s and 80s, autism was not commonly diagnosed in girls, so there are whole groups of women that went undiagnosed or misdiagnosed when they were young girls. Fortunately, these days that is not the case anymore, which is fantastic news. I must admit that I didn't really understand myself what autism was, and I only had the popular portrayals of autistic people in the media, and I couldn't really relate to any of those. So even though I had never previously considered that I might be autistic, my diagnosis came as a really positive revelation for me. It allowed me to look back on my life through the lens of autism and understand why I do the things that I do, why I am the way that I am, and it has really brought, for me, a sense of self-acceptance. It's my goal in life to spread awareness and educate people with regards to what autism might look like in different people. And just a quick note about language. Being diagnosed with autism is one thing, and that's fine, but for myself, I refer to myself as an autistic person. I don't say that I have autism or I'm living with autism. Autism is a part of me. I am autistic, it's a part of my personality, it's who I am, and I'm not ashamed of it, I'm quite proud of it. So for me, I'm a proud autistic person. So without further ado, here are the 10 most common comments and responses that people make when they find out that I am autistic. What is autism anyway? Well, I'm glad you asked. A quick Google search reveals the following: a serious developmental disorder that impairs the ability to communicate and interact. Autism spectrum disorder impacts the nervous system. The range and severity of symptoms can vary widely. Common symptoms include difficulty with communication, difficulty with social interactions, obsessive interests, and repetitive behaviours. So hopefully that clarifies a little bit what autism actually is, although it is quite a complex thing. You don't look autistic. So what does autism look like? Well, most portrayals in the media show autistic people with the most visible autistic traits. So they might be non-verbal or have a lot of stimming behaviour, which is physical movements to calm themselves. But autism is a spectrum, and many people on the spectrum are very clever at camouflaging their autistic traits. It's called masking. I consider myself to be a next level expert at masking. I have had decades to practice and I've gotten really good at it. I've learned techniques in order to cover up my confusion or discomfort in certain situations. If I'm not tired, I can even maintain really good eye contact for a long time, and I think that I would pass as any neurotypical person. So you can see why I get this comment a lot, that I don't look autistic. We're all a bit autistic, aren't we? No, we're not. Autistic people are autistic. You may have some traits in common with autistic people, for example, sensitivity to certain light or sound, but that doesn't mean that you're autistic. For example, my husband is quite particular about certain food textures, but he is definitely not autistic. In fact, this type of comment can be seen as a little bit dismissive. It's really saying that the struggles and the challenges that autistic people face are insignificant, really, because everybody has the same struggles, and that's just not true. It sort of implies that autistic people should just get on with it, and really that's a form of ableism. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. Although I appreciate the sentiment, I have not been diagnosed with a terminal illness. I am autistic. I've been autistic my entire life. So if you didn't feel sorry for me before, then don't start feeling sorry for me now. Seriously though, my diagnosis was a positive revelation for me and really has led to a lot of self-discovery and has had a big impact on my life. My mental health has improved, generally speaking, and I do have a better feeling of self-acceptance. Oh, everyone is being diagnosed with autism these days. Although it might seem that way, that is not actually true. Not everyone is being diagnosed with autism. In fact, the percentage of adults with autism in Australia is less than 5%. I think that there are probably two main reasons why people think that everyone is being diagnosed with autism. And number one is that more people are talking about autism, which is a fantastic thing. It's become less shameful. It's not something to be hidden or feel bad about. And there is a lot more education around it, more awareness. People know what it is and they're, not afraid to reveal to people that they're autistic. And to me, that is a really positive thing. And the second reason I think that people think that everyone has autism these days is because diagnosticians have better tools and are able to identify autism much more easily these days than they were in the 70s, 80s, maybe even 90s, particularly in adults and particularly in adult women. The reason I say that is because women tend to be a little bit better at masking. So it was previously quite difficult to pick up autism in women, but not so these days. You didn't do that before you knew you were autistic. When I received my diagnosis at age 50, I felt really relieved, and there was a lot of self-acceptance involved too. And I began to relax a lot more about who I am and why I am the way that I am. And I had spent decades masking my autism and hiding it, and really quite terrified that people would find out that I was different and that I was having these challenges and these issues. But since my diagnosis, I'm much more open about who I am and also about my needs and my preferences, and that really has, perhaps to people that know me quite well, it's probably changed the way that I behave in front of them, because I'm not scared anymore about them finding out that I'm, a little bit odd. And just within myself, I've given myself permission to avoid certain situations or to compensate for things. And that has really changed my own mindset, which is probably visible from the outside too. So being able to express myself and not always having to come up with excuses has really changed my behaviours. So in one way, the person making those comments is right. My behaviours are probably different to what they were before, but they've always been there, those behaviours. It's just that before I wasn't able to express them. I was always hiding them, and now I'm not. Well, my friend is autistic and you are nothing like them. So here's an interesting fact. One of my sisters is also autistic. In fact, she was diagnosed around the same time as me. Now, she is quite different to me, but she also does share some common autistic traits with me. Autism can run in families. It can have a genetic component, so it was really not much of a surprise to us that we're both autistic. However, in her case, she has some traits, for example, sensitivity to noise, whereas I'm not so sensitive to noise. She's also very shy, and she's had some other mental health issues as well, which I won't go into for privacy reasons. But it's called autism spectrum disorder. In other words, it's a spectrum, which doesn't mean that on one end is very autistic and the other end not very autistic. It means that it's a spectrum where people are in various positions on that spectrum. So as all people are different, also all autistic people are different. But you're high functioning, right? It's not real autism. High functioning is a term that used to be used for level 1 autism. It is not used these days, and for very good reason. It can come across as dismissive for people with level 1 autism, that their struggles are not real and that they don't really have autism. And it can also come across as quite judgmental for people with level 2 and level 3 autism. Take me as an example. I have excellent language and verbal skills, a high IQ. I have started a successful business from scratch. I've been married for 30 years. I've got children. I can work out a water pump like a pro. I am a valuable asset at quiz nights. But would it surprise you to know that I am officially a level 2 on the autism diagnosis scale? So you can see it's actually quite impossible to assess capability from the outside. No, you're not. Are you sure? This is one of the weirdest responses. And believe me, I've had this response before. If you were a diabetic and you were telling somebody that you were a diabetic, would you get this response? I'm thinking that that wouldn't happen. But I think people have a certain perception of what autism is and what it looks like, and they don't think that I match that. As for if I'm sure, yes, I'm very sure. And so is the doctor that diagnosed me with autism. She was the lead doctor in my assessment and a very knowledgeable and experienced woman with a PhD in autism in adult women. So she specializes in that area. So if anybody knows, she knows. The assessment itself is quite exhausting. It runs over several hours, includes a lot of questionnaires, interviews, and scenarios, all sorts of different tests that you need to do. And at the end of it, they come up with a 20-page report, which you get, which details every single aspect of your autism, and it's quite interesting to read. So yes, I am quite sure that I'm autistic. Actually, this comment is quite hurtful because you've worked up the courage to tell somebody something personal about yourself, that you're autistic, and they've immediately assumed that you're lying or you're making it up for some reason. And it can be really, really quite hurtful. I've even had somebody imply that I'm making it up for attention, which is quite ironic considering that I really dislike attention. And I'm not sure that you'd really want to make up something like that for attention. Wouldn't you rather make up an incredible success that you've had, or a great achievement, something that would put you in the glow of glory for people to admire? That's the kind of attention you'd probably want. As I said, it is one of the weirdest responses. But you seem so normal. Do I? Well done to me. My years of masking have finally paid off. Also, what is normal? I know some really delightfully quirky and eccentric people, and they're definitely not neurodivergent. And wouldn't it be boring if we were all the same? You probably already know quite a few autistic people in your life, and you might not be aware of it. Or perhaps you're autistic yourself. Either way, I encourage you to learn more about autism. In fact, I've got a blog post on my website which details my own journey with autism, which you might find interesting to read. I'll link it down below in the description. That might be a good place to start, but there are also some great books which I will link for you as well. As for me, if I had really understood and known what autism is and what it looked like, I may have saved myself years of needless struggle. And I really hope that by me telling you all of this today, that I might be able to save you years of struggle too. Thanks so much for watching. If this resonated with you or inspired you, I would love it if you would leave a comment. And if you know somebody in your life who could benefit from watching this video, please do share it. You never know, you could be helping somebody who is really struggling. And don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.